Hello everyone, welcome to Snap or Pass. My name's MJ and this week's card is Wiccan. Wiccan is a 4/7 on reveal if you've spent all your energy this game plus 2 max energy. In this video we're going to look at the Spotlight week that Wiccan is in and review that. We're going to look at the mechanics, give you some cool deck ideas, talk about synergies, counters, and then ultimately whether the card is a snap or pass. Should you buy it? So this Spotlight week is a very high value week. We've actually got 3 Series 5 cards here. So alongside Wiccan we've got Loki, been recently changed to a 3/5, now replaces your deck with a copy of your opponent's deck and draws you a card, and they all cost 1 less. So somewhat similar to before, but somewhat different. From playing the new version, I actually really like the new version. It's a very different style of card, and actually works well in a slightly broader range of decks. You could just use it as like a bit of a jump start to a deck that's running out of steam. So very good card, still brilliant. Used to be one of the best cards in the game. It's still brilliant, so I think this is a good hit. And Pixie, I love this variant, by the way. And yeah, the card itself, it's definitely seen brighter days, but I still think there's plenty of potential with it. Shuffles all the costs of the cards that started in your deck. It's decent. It's seen some success in some Lady Deathstrikes type shells. So it's a strong card. So overall, this is a high value week, and it's definitely a week with fairly good cards across the board. But let's talk about Wiccan and the mechanics and the difficulties with this card, because this is not a simple card to evaluate. And I think even myself, and I'm not saying even myself as if I should have, but people haven't cracked this card yet. This card is going to need cracking, and we will talk about why. But first of all, so you have to have spent all your energy each turn. As of time of recording, we don't know if that includes the turn that you play Wiccan. For example, if you play Wiccan on turn 5 and you haven't played anything else, you'll have 1 energy left over. We don't know if that is included in having to have spent all of your energy each turn. And I couldn't even guess. To be honest. So that is going to be particularly important if you want to abuse this card and trigger the effect multiple times with things like Grandmaster and Absorbing Man. Absorbing Man on turn 5, for example, just literally won't work at all if Wiccan needs to have spent the energy on the turn that he's played. So that's going to be a really difficult and complicated thing. I know that Second Dinner have been asked in the Discord, in the developer updates, and haven't yet answered, so hopefully we'll get an answer to that soon. I basically just implied it there, but just to be completely clear, this is a very powerful effect that you can re-trigger with things like Odin, Absorbing Man, Grandmaster. Even Grandmaster itself will work because you can cheat out Wiccan early via things like Zabu and Psylocke. You can play Wiccan on turn 3, and then you can Absorbing Man on turn 4, and then you've got 4 extra energy on the next 2 final turns. So that in itself is going to be good. There's definitely possibility with this card, and it allows for this massive injection of energy at the end of the game. The problem is, you see this little cross that I got on the screen? This is like the difficulty with Wiccan. Arishem basically gives you 6 extra energy across the entire game. Wiccan is basically 4 extra energy. If you think about Arishem, in a normal 6-turn game you get 1 extra energy per turn. That's 6 extra. Think about Wiccan. If you play Wiccan on turn 4, it gives you 2 extra energy on turn 5 and 2 extra on turn 6. Now, that's obviously not telling the whole story, because it's not telling the limbo stuff, the turn 7s with magic. It's not talking about cheating Wiccan out early, which is going to be the primary strategy with him. I think most Wiccan decks would play Psylocke and or Zabu. Not just because it's good to get Wiccan out early because it's an extra turn to take advantage of the extremely powerful effect, but also it's an extra turn that you don't have to worry about fulfilling this very difficult requirement. Like, it's going to be difficult to play on curve every single turn. You're not always going to be able to achieve it. But there are some helpful cards that will make that easier, which obviously we'll talk about in a minute as well. But let's talk about the pros of this. So in early leaks, Wiccan was a 4-5 and he was changed to a 4-7 before this season. This often means that in his internal testing, the card hasn't gone down super well. So yeah, he probably needed this little buff, and maybe this is an early indicator that his ability is inconsistent. However, the 4-7 stat line actually feels much less punishing. I think the biggest change that does to him is that as a 4-5, he has to be a build around, basically. You wouldn't want to just play out a 4-5, not get the effect triggered. That feels actively bad. However, just playing a 4-7 will just generally feel fine or good. Like, it will feel good. So that kind of, for me, it opens up the door a little bit for Wiccan. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I've had a spare slot in a deck, sometimes I'll just stick in Stegron just because it's a 4-7, decent stat line, and he can do a little bit. For me, it's going to be a similar thing with Wiccan. Generally, I like to play decks that curve out nicely anyway, so it's not going to be impossible to just stick Wiccan in a random deck and make use of that extra ability. So, yeah, not punishing to play on this new stat line. It's an extremely powerful effect to trigger once, which is of course why it's so difficult to trigger, but that can snowball dramatically. You can trigger this multiple times via things like Odin, via things like Absorbing Man. Hell, I mean, is Beast out of the question? There's lots of different ways to re-trigger it. I mean, Karmartage, the on-reveal effects are triggered twice. Wong, this guy can be manipulated into triggering many, many times. So that's going to be really interesting. Again, it comes down to the consistency, but I think there's going to be some really interesting brews that the Marvel Snap community are going to come up with. So it's going to be a really interesting one. It's finding the best way to exploit that energy that is going to be the hard part. This guy is bloody easy to cheat out on turn 3. As we said, Psylocke and Zabu. I think generally speaking, you're probably going to favour Zabu simply because he's got the one extra energy. Playing Psylocke and playing Zabu in order to cheat out Wiccan, it's the exact same effect. You're getting Wiccan out early. The obvious benefit of Psylocke is that you don't have to cheat out just Wiccan. However, I think Zabu's generally going to be fractionally better just for that extra power. And he's going to allow for some crazy combos. Like this guy, if you can trigger him multiple times, literally going to allow for 2 6 costs to be played on the final turns of the game. Because I think sticking magic in these decks is going to make sense in a lot of cases. You want to extend the game, extend your benefit, have all those massive 6 cost cards, and really play multiple expensive cards. The cons with this guy, consistency may severely limit the power level. I mean, if you can't reliably get him out and have his ability trigger, the deck's just going to feel like a wash. We are certainly going to look at the cards that you can use to ensure that it's as consistent as possible, but ultimately it's not going to happen every game, and that might make the decks really struggle. It is a hard requirement. Playing on curve every single turn, up until maybe turn 3 if you've got Zabu, turn 4 if you haven't, it's going to be a tough thing. You're not always going to be able to do it, and the massive challenge with this is going to be deck building. You need to have enough cheap cards to ensure that you're going to trigger the ability. So that means cards like maybe Quicksilver. I'm actually not a Quicksilver person. I'll talk about why I don't like Quicksilver in the Wiccan's deck. But hey, maybe Quicksilver. Maybe more likely Maria Hill. Maybe cards like Kitty Pryde. Maybe cards like Kate Bishop. You need to make sure that you've got enough of those so that you can reliably trigger Wiccan, but enough expensive stuff like Odin, Iron Man, larger, more expensive, more impactful, more powerful cards to actually take advantage of Wiccan's ability. So you need to have this mix. It's going to be a new style of deck, or is it going to be shield decks? Are shield decks going to be key here? I think they are. Let's move on to the counters. So of course we've got Cosmo, and we've also got Sandman. You're going to have extra energy. You're going to be able to do more stuff at the end of the game. And unfortunately, there is actually quite a popular Sandman deck in the meta at the moment. It's like the Sandman Patriot Ultron style deck. It's very good. It's very hot right now. So that could hamper Wiccan's ability on release. But let's move over to key synergies and some deck ideas. As I say, I'm really interested to see what decks the community comes up with, because the true key of Wiccan is that, yeah, we spoke about in the mechanics. Why wouldn't you just play Arishem? Arishem doesn't have these requirements. Yes, you get a dodgy deck with Arishem, but it doesn't have all these hoops that you have to jump through to get this extra energy, whereas Wiccan does. So the key difference between Wiccan and Arishem is Wiccan allows you to go higher. It allows for more different combos, and that is going to be the interesting space to keep an eye on with this card. What decks can people come up with? Which exploits can people do? Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. But in terms of the key synergies, so as I say, I've put Domino down here and I've spoken about Quicksilver, but I don't recommend them. The thing is, if you're playing Quicksilver and Domino, that's 2 draws from your deck that you are blocking from drawing Wiccan. Because as important as it is to get those cards and get that early curve out, you do also need to draw Wiccan. And if you've got Quicksilver and Domino, you're blocking 2 slots. So I'm actually not on the train of the Quicksilver and Domino. I'm more in the Maria Hill. I think she's brilliant because she's obviously 1 cost and she adds a 2 cost to your hand. So straight away, that 1 card alone fulfills 2 of the steps. However, you probably ideally want to be playing Zabu or Psylocke, as we've said. So maybe Kitty Pryde is one that makes more sense. Because there's another important thing with Kitty Pryde as well. Kitty Pryde jumps back into your hand, and she, first of all, is going to even out your curve. So if you don't have that 3 cost yet, you haven't pulled into the Zabu or the Psylocke, and you haven't got your 3 cost, maybe you've got your 2, and you can play Kitty Pryde down and even it out. So that's going to be good. But also, Wiccan is increasing your energy. You're going to be able to play more cards. Maybe character card spaces is going to become an issue. So you will relish the fact that Kitty has jumped back into your hand. So there's a couple of early game ideas there. Also, Hawkeye Kate Bishop, brand new card. She's a 2 cost card. Play her out on 2, and she adds those couple of 1 costs to your hand. So again, if you happen to draw into your cards and you don't have that 3 cost card, maybe those arrows allow you to build up with other 1 costs or with another 2 costs that you've got, and you can then get out Wiccan on the turn 4, and it's building blocks, it's curving out nicely. It's these cards that curve out nicely. And then I've also got here Speed as just another upcoming card, next week's card in fact, who has an ongoing ability of +1 power for each turn in which you spent all of your energy, which is the same requirement that Wiccan has. Wiccan, of course, is just an on-reveal. So, as I said, I think the best decks that make most sense with Wiccan is shield-style decks. We saw this with Arishem. You've got extra energy, and actually playing shield-style decks is a better thing for you because you have more options, and you also have discounts through Quinjet as well. So I think Quinjet is, again, going to be a really nice card with Wiccan. The best deck that I've got here is this first deck. The other couple I think are alright. I think the third one's a bit of a meme, but this first, if you're going to try any of mine, try this top one, Wiccan Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. We've got Maria Hill, Quinjet, and Agent 13. This is obviously our early game. We need to get one of them out early. I do have only Zabu in this deck in order to try and get Wiccan out early. I haven't double dipped with Psylocke as well. I've also got Hawkeye Kate Bishop. But hopefully we do get pulled to Zabu, and then you can get Wiccan out on turn 3. If you don't get Wiccan out on turn 3, it's not the end of the world. You can still just pump your hand with either the stuff that you've generated through Maria Hill, maybe Agent 13 has generated something cheap enough that you can play. Otherwise, you just go with the safe Agent Coulson. And then hopefully you can play Wiccan on turn 4, and then that's when we can go explosive, because we've got Gwenpool, along with cards like Iron Man, going to really dramatically benefit from Gwenpool, of course. We've got Odin. Something that you can do in this deck is if you cheat out Wiccan early, play him on turn 3, you can Gwenpool and do other stuff on turn 4. On turn 5, you can Odin to trigger Wiccan again and to trigger Gwenpool again, which will allow you to completely dump your hand. You may well have played other shield stuff in there as well, because you've got Quinjet and loads of way to generate cards, or cards that didn't start in your deck, like the arrows, which brings down Mockingbird's cost. Mockingbird might be a 6/12, or she's obviously reduced in cost, but you've got the fact that she's reduced in cost and you've got more energy. And basically just all of your cards have got a little bit of extra power from Gwenpool. The Iron Man can do bits. The She-Hulk can do bits. So listen, there's loads of synergies here that work together really nicely. But I think the mega cracked line is going to be Zabu, Wiccan. Well, probably Quinjet, Zabu, Wiccan, Gwenpool. I mean, what else can you do on that turn? I mean, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Gwenpool, Agent Coulson, then Odin, and just go absolutely explosive on the final turn. I think this sort of thing is going to feel the best. And I think maybe you could have other really powerful, really impactful on reveals. Maybe not. Maybe you could cut the Gwenpool. Maybe you could cut the Agent 13 because she's obviously less reliable in what cost she's going to give you. So she's less so about the curve, less so about benefiting you, your curve. So maybe you cut those few things. Maybe even She-Hulk in favour of some other really powerful on reveals. In case you don't get the Wiccan, you can still do like Odin things. So maybe White Tiger in there, something like that. But I think that has a lot of potential. Next up is High Evolutionary. Wiccan is about spending all of your energy up to a certain point. High Evo might not necessarily feel like the best fit because Wiccan is about spending all of your energy. However, Wiccan spends all of your energy in order to give you more energy. So once you've made the fulfillment of Wiccan, you can then start popping off with High Evolutionary things like Sunspot. We've also got the classic combo of Moon Girl and She-Hulk in here. And we've got Psylocke for the extra energy. Nico's going to add, obviously, the early game curve that is so important with Wiccan decks, but also potential extra energy, potential extra utility. So maybe you're duplicating cards later on. And yeah, you'll see there's no magic in here. Couldn't quite fit her into this version of the deck, but I'd certainly like to see it. So maybe toy with a version of that. I was honestly thinking about dropping Hulk. But I did think with the extra energy, you certainly may be able to have turns where you are playing both Hulk and She-Hulk, or Hulk, and you're able to leave over all of that extra energy to tick Hulk up, tick Cyclops across, tick Sunspot and Misty Knight. So there's lots of interesting things there. I'm not sure if this is going to work out. I'm not sure if there's going to be a decent version of High Evolutionary, but I am going to try it. I'm excited to try it. And then finally, as I said, guys, I think this is a bit of a memey deck. This is called Insurance Wiccan. This is all about really, I should have called it Insurance Wiccan, not Insurance Wiccan. I've had a migraine the last 2 days. Give me a break. So yeah, this is about ensuring that you get Wiccan out. We've got cards like Jubilee, Iron Lad, and Zabu. So these are, hopefully you're going to get a cheap 4-cost no matter what happens. And then hopefully you just get out the Wiccan. And that allows you to play into your more expensive cards like Nick Fury, giving you lots of 6-cost cards, and you can do some 6-cost shenanigans on the later turns. We've also got a few more shield cards. Maria is here again. We've got Kitty here again. We've got Hawkeye to help out with the curve. But we also got a couple of powerful on reveals that you also wouldn't mind to get out early, like White Queen and Gamora. If you happen to pull them out of Jubilee or Iron Lad, you're going to feel fine. And yeah, it's like I say, it's just about ensuring that you actually get Wiccan out. So Jubilee and Iron Lad both can hit Wiccan themselves, and yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty self-explanatory. You just try and cobble something together because, as I said, it's a bit of a meme. Yeah, Wiccan is such an interesting card, but it's such a difficult card to crack. I haven't done it yet, I know that. It's about finding the late game combos that will now be possible only due to Wiccan. Wiccan gives us 8 energy on the final turn in like the worst case scenario, or it gives us 9 energy on a turn 7. What combos can we do that are so powerful with that specific type? Is it going to be a combination of like a 6-cost and a 3-cost? Is it going to be a 5-cost and a 4-cost? Is it going to be a couple of 4s? What is this going to look like? Is there going to be some sort of Zola Zabu thing in here, and it just permits like what like 4 costs? Yeah, we don't know exactly what these decks look like yet. And so is he a snap or pass? I think he has masses of potential, but we just don't know what to do with him yet. I've said he's a snap. I am getting him myself. I quite like this Pixie variant. It wouldn't be the end of the world for me if I open this Pixie variant and then Wiccan. I'm going to try my very hardest to get Wiccan to work. I think if Wiccan if I didn't think that Wiccan was going to work so well with Shield, I'd definitely be less interested in him. And I think he's one of the hardest cards in a while to get working. But all of that being said, because it sounds like I'm being quite negative for a card that I'm saying is a pass, is migraine again, is a snap. But his potential power level is so high. I just think it's gonna need some cracking. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.